Hi, everyone. How are you doing? My name is Amber, and today I'm going to tell you about my office romance, if you can call it that. My story is about two different worlds, and they're merging. If my story sounds familiar to you, give me a plus sign or any smiley faces. My mom and dad and I are from a poor family and lived almost always as poor. My dad was the only one who worked in our family. He had to get money for all of us, and we could barely pay our creditors. And one day, in order to pay off one debt, he got into another and got involved with some very bad people. Not being able to pay back the debt on time, they took my father right out of our house. The man said Dad would work off the debt. He promised to get him back to us safely, but now he would be working for him for the next few months. This finally knocked my mother out of her mind. During the stress, she got even worse. She had terrible migraines, which had kept my mother from working for the past few years. This was still while I was in my last year of high school. From the moment my father was taken away from us, life turned upside down, and I decided to take care of my mother since I didn't know how long my father would be away. And also, I needed to get him out. The first thing I did was to get my papers from school and go look for a job. An old acquaintance helped us by informing us about a vacancy in another city, in a very, very rich area. I went to the interview and was told that they would still take me on despite my lack of skills only because of my pretty face. No, it wasn't a compliment, it was just an assessment. A strict-looking woman came out to me with her hair perfectly pulled back in a bun, where not a single hair dared to stick out. She told me that I would be servicing the second floor, cleaning, the bedding, regular airing, and also cleaning Mr. Tom's private room. So young, already the master. Don't you dare. Keep in line and don't cross the line. Do you understand? Know your place. We're from another world. They're from another. All we can do for them is our work. If you don't want to lose your place in the sun and a good living, do your job well. You're a maid, Amber. Yes, ma'am. She startled me with her loud voice, but I only realized later that she did it purely professionally. After all, she supervised the work of about 50 servants throughout the house, including garden and yard workers. We called her Auntie. As soon as I was assigned a room, I changed and got to work. I was told to bring Mrs. Storm's hostess coffee. I went into her room and set the tray on the table. She was sitting in front of her mirror in her robe at the time and looked very obliquely in my direction. Didn't they teach you to knock? I was confused. Excuse me, ma'am, but you said yourself you wanted coffee. And you're still going to snap at me? Auntie, teach us some manners. She yelled at the whole house, and I got it from Auntie. After a couple of minutes, I went to clean the second floor corridors, and then Auntie told me to take Mr. Tom his lunch. I brought the food in on a tray and knocked on the door, but he didn't open it. Leave it, he said without leaving the room, and I put the tray down on the floor. When I returned an hour later, the food was untouched. I ran around and carried the food just so, and then I asked my aunt why he wasn't eating. She said it was none of my business. It was my business to carry the food, even if it wasn't being eaten. Then I was told to clean the bathroom, and I went in there and noticed that the light wasn't on anywhere. Then I decided to light the flashlight on my phone and clean in the dark. Suddenly someone came in, and I got up from the floor in the darkness and wanted to say that the light was broken, but someone stepped in the bucket with their foot and fell to the floor. The water spilled all over the place, and I slipped on the wet floor and fell right on top of somebody. And then the light came on. It was Mr. Tom. I was lying on top of him, and then I got up sharply, scared. I started apologizing, but he just laughed. The light is over there, worth a wave. It's smart technology. Have you heard of it? I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to. Did you mop the floors with just a flashlight? Wow, you're asking for an award, aren't you? The landlady came in and scolded me at the sight of the filth, but Tom stood up for me and said it was all his fault. And then he asked about me. She's going to bring you some food. Well, in that case, make some eggs. What? Aren't you hungry? The cooks will do everything. No, I want her to make my eggs. What are you doing here? Go! I don't know why he said that, but I made them as I made it for my father, with greens, spinach, and bread toasted in butter. Mr. Tom ate it all, and he asked me to sit next to him while he ate. From that moment on, I cooked eggs for him 3 times a day. Even my aunt was surprised that he was eating, and I wondered why he hadn't been eating. And every time I sat in his room and waited. That's how we met. I noticed the beautiful paintings on his wall. It turned out that he'd painted them himself, and then he asked my opinion on them. Why would he do that? But the work was good. I liked them. Excuse me, sir. Can I ask you a question? Yes. Did you lose someone? What? How did you understand these? Your paintings. I feel something painful in them, like I did when my own father was taken away. Yeah, my dad died 2 years ago, but I'm still not over it. What about your dad? Is that why you didn't eat? Yeah, I couldn't eat in this house without him. We used to eat together all the time. Ah, that's how... My dad? He was taken by creditors. I guess you could say to work off his debts. Sad. And now you're working here to get him out? Yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't have that problem. It's okay. We're just from different worlds. It happens. Have you eaten? I'm gonna go, if you'll excuse me. Hold on. Have you ever listened to old vinyl records? In a couple of minutes in his room, Tom was screaming music, and we were dancing the night away. He seemed happy and excited, and I forgot where I worked. We didn't stop until his mother showed up at the door. She immediately called me into her office. She thanked me for Tom, said he was fine with me, but then handed me a check for $1 million and said it was money to keep me away from him. I took the money and left, thinking that I would get my father out, cure my mother, and I could stay out of work because there was plenty of money. But I was wrong. After a couple of days, I realized that I was thinking about him all the time. I was forbidden to go near him, and he'd stopped eating again and closed himself in his room. I went to him in the middle of the night and fried some eggs. He ate them and smiled again. He said, I thought you were trying to starve me to death. No, I just wanted you to get fat, so I'm feeding you at night. I like you, Amber. He kissed me and I kissed him back. I knew I was making a mistake and that we could never be together, but what could I do about my feelings? The next morning, I went into my mistress's office and returned the check. I'm sorry, I can't accept this. Have you decided that you can do anything around here? I'm going to fire you. No, I'm good. Besides, Mr. Tom only eats what I cook. How dare you? Her phone rang. Go. I'll talk to you later. I ran out of there. Still, I was sure I was doing the right thing. Tom came out of his room and told my aunt that he was picking up on his personal business. We had a great day together, walking, eating ice cream, skateboarding, and laughing a lot. I had fallen in love with him, and he'd already stopped denying it. Then we returned home, where Tom had guests waiting. He was introduced to a bride from a wealthy family. I could barely stand on my feet anymore. They and his parents ate dinner together, and afterward, I cleaned up after them all the time. The adults talked about how nice it would be to marry their children off, and the girl was definitely interested in Tom. After he went off to his place and Mrs. Storm came up to me and told me that I would never be together with her son, it hurt. I cried and washed the dishes. I couldn't stand the pain. Then someone came up from behind me and hugged me. It was Tom. They might see us. I don't care. I missed you. You have a fiancé. I don't need her. I have you. I like you and I'm not backing down. I kissed him and his mother saw it. Through the scandals and yelling, 4 hours later, I was home. I was fired. In the end, I realized we couldn't be together. My poor mother missed me, but I managed to earn some money and close the debt. Daddy came back, and all that was left was to raise money for my mother's treatment. My parents were choking on regret that I hadn't finished school, but I had other things on my mind. In the evening, I went out into the yard to clean up some old stuff, and there was Tom, on the doorstep. What are you doing here? Aren't you glad? I missed you. Go home, I'm busy. You mean you didn't miss me? Tom, come on, it was about the money. Your mother paid me to eat, and then she paid me to go out with you. Yeah, except you didn't take the money not to go out with me. You also told her that your feelings wouldn't change, and you gave her the check back. Were you eavesdropping? It just came out. He hugged me and then said he was hungry. I introduced him to my parents, and they welcomed him warmly and fed him. A couple of hours later, his mother arrived and made a scandal, but Tom said that if she didn't give us her blessing, he would come to live with me. At my place? Are you against it? Me? My mother smiled and said they'd find another meal and bedding if they had to, and then my parents invited Mrs. Storm to eat dinner with us and chat. She hesitated at first, but then she agreed. I think that's a good sign.